Welcome to another edition of 13 Tribe Podcast, where we are spiritually in tune and socially engaged. I am your host, Brother Lee, aka 13th Amendment. Rifka, he couldn't be with us today. He is on sabbatical, aka paternity leave. Him and his wife just gave birth to a baby boy, and so it was necessary for him to take the necessary time needed to just get acquainted with the joys of fatherhood. I would like to just take a moment to, in this particular show, to address Roe v. Wade, which was overturned a couple of days ago. And for you that don't know, Roe v. Wade was the decision by the Supreme Court of the United States of America that basically made abortion legal in all 50 states. It has been documented that since the 1973 court decision, over 63.5 million abortions have taken place in the U.S. and has become one of the primary issues that has impacted just about every election cycle and effectively divided voters into two camps. Basically, either you're pro-life or you are pro-choice. Now, I'm a registered independent voter who has voted for Democratic politicians several times. And the question that I'm often confronted with is, how can I, as a Christian, support politicians who are pro-choice and who are in many cases supportive, in many ways supportive of abortion rights? Isn't the Bible against abortion? And would Jesus vote for abortion? Those are the questions that I typically get hit with. And I want to start by saying that both the pro-life versus pro-choice argument is a false dichotomy. Just because I am pro-life or you are pro-life does not mean that you are anti-choice. And being pro-choice does not mean that you are anti-life. These are social, political labels that make the issues seem black and white without addressing the gray areas. It puts us in ideological boxes and we never get to the root of the issues. Secondly, both sides of the aisle historically have been guilty of violating the sanctity of life and rejecting freedom of choice. Look at Jim Crow. Look at slavery. Both Democrats and Republicans have played a part in violating the sanctity of life as well as violating pro-choice. So let's not play games and be honest. Politics and politicians mostly are about getting votes to maintain power. Our system is a representative democracy, meaning that elected officials are elected by the people to represent the will of the people as a constitutional republic and representative democracy. So statistically speaking, based on Pew Research, the total number of abortion providers have declined dramatically since the 1980s under both Republican and Democratic presidents. This means that the rate of abortions has been on the decline. Now, the highest numbers of abortions on record was during the 80s and early 90s under the Reagan administration and the followed by the Bush administration. Both Republican presidents, both who are Republican presidents, and both who have had extremely high abortion numbers when in office. So on this issue, I want to just talk about a couple of things that I think that is important for us to think about. One, when it comes to choice, as a Christian and someone who holds dear to the Bible does not mention voting during elections, but presents choice. Now, hear me now. Presents choice as a matter of conscience, in which God gives us freedom to choose and live by the choices that we make, whether it be collective choices or individual choices. Our choices are our choices. They are divinely given to us. They are our divine right that is given to us by God, sanctioned by God for us to use as we live out. Um, so our choices, again, they may please God, and our choices may offend God. However, having a choice is our God-given right. To take away choice is to take away a fundamental right to our human existence that was sanctioned by God and given to us. It is a divine right. Once you take away choice, you are in violation of God's perfect will concerning us as human beings. Now, I think it's important that we take a look at the scriptures to kind of, give us insight as to how we arrive at the conclusions, or how I'm arriving at the conclusion that I'm arriving to. So let's just look at two scriptures. Moses speaking to Israel, he says this in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. He says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." So here in this particular passage, we see pro-life and pro-choice coexisting as something in which can be embraced. So you can be both pro-life and pro-choice. It is a false dichotomy to say you have to be one or the other. Also, Joshua speaking to Israel says in Joshua chapter 24, verses 14 to 15, he says this: "Now fear Yahweh and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshiped beyond the Euphrates rivers and in Egypt, and serve Yahweh." Verse 15, "But if serving Yahweh seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates," that's basically when they were back in Egypt, "or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve Yahweh." In other words, just to bring it to our context today, I am not responsible for the decisions that other people make in their households, including the God or gods that they serve. How they choose to live their life is completely up to them, and it is not my call to govern their choice. Now, that being said, that is, you see a representation of pro-choice without violating pro-life. I cannot speak for the next household because I do not know what they are up against or the factors behind their decision. Everyone is entitled to make a decision and live according to the decision that they make. Now, another thing to think about is the fact that the church is not the state. We cannot eliminate abortions, but we should be working towards minimizing the need for abortions. Again, let me say that. Let me say that one more time. The church is not the state. We cannot eliminate abortions, but we should be working towards minimizing the need for abortion or for abortions. The church has a responsibility of promoting what is right, doing what is right, and being what is right. Scott McConnell, executive director of Lifeway Research, said this in a Focus on the Family article, and I thought this was very insightful. And he said that 2/3 or 65% of churchgoers say church members judge single women who are pregnant. In other words, walk into church and the majority believe that if a single woman was to walk into the church, that the majority of the church would be judging that single woman or single women for being pregnant. Now, also, a majority, that is 54%, think churches oversimplify decisions about pregnancy options. Let me read that again. 54% of churchgoers think churches oversimplify decisions about pregnancy options. Look at this one. Fewer than half, that is 41%, believe 41% of churchgoers in church believe churches are prepared to help with decisions about unwanted pregnancies. Let me flip the numbers just so you can get a better understanding of what this means. It means that 59%. It means that 59% of churchgoers believe that the church is unprepared to help with decisions related to unwanted pregnancies. Uninformed, incapable of help provide information and resources for women that are dealing with unwanted pregnancies. And last stat, only 3 in 10, that is 30% of churches, give accurate advice about pregnancy options. So what is that basically saying when I look at all these stats? It's basically saying that churches are failing to adequately address the needs and the concerns of women who find themselves pregnant and do not know what to do. Now, that's a sad indictment that churches are failing to live up their obligation of addressing the needs of women, specifically in the area of pregnancy. The church, in, as I look through scriptures, has the has to be the model for the culture when we fail to demonstrate. And so when we fail to demonstrate Christ and demonstrate justice to our own, then what example are we even setting for the government? Basically, what blueprint are we laying down for the government to say that, hey, we got something that actually works? This is something in which you can kind of, create laws behind that will help progress or further our society. The church is failing to model that sense of servant leadership if we are unable to demonstrate Christ and demonstrate justice to our very own members who are attending church. Now, we shouldn't look to the government for answers. The government is basically has shown themselves many, many, many times again in this nation to be incapable of providing solutions, providing adequate answers. We, as the church, should provide the blueprint for the government to look towards so that they can see us as the light on the hill, so that they can see us as the means to solving a lot of the issues that are taking place in our culture. We should be the ones creating that blueprint. We need to rise above our political discourse. We need to rise above political discourse and be driven to serve those who are dealing with these challenges. No woman, and absolutely no woman, should be afraid to talk to her church community when she is dealing with pregnancy challenges, whether it be unwanted pregnancies or wanted pregnancies. No woman should ever be afraid to speak to her church community. Likewise, the body of Christ must invest in resources that meet the needs of the community because we represent Christ to the community. That is our primary job, is to represent Christ to that community, both in action and words. So not only are we to preach the gospel, we are to live out the gospel and serve our community, represent Christ to that community. So lastly, we need to be confident in God's sovereignty because God is concerned about all life, because Yahweh is life and therefore not disconnected from our present reality. Listen to me. I can never, never, as a man, fully appreciate the inner tension that a woman experiences when she has to make a medical decision regarding what's going on in her own body. But guess what? Guess what? Yahweh, Yahweh knows what a woman is struggling with, And the judge, and as the judge of all earth, he will do what is right. God can decide to intervene and override our decision making, as well as our circumstances, as well as the circumstances that come as a result or an outcome of the decisions that we make. God can override that. God can intervene in that. So we don't always have to know what's best in our struggles. We just have to understand and appreciate that in the midst of our struggles, in the midst of our challenges, God remains sovereign. I'm thinking of King Darius. King Darius was a Persian king, and in the writings of Daniel, in the book of Daniel, King Darius had to do the most unthinkable and execute Daniel, who was his friend, who was like someone who he trusted, someone who he admired. King Darius, Persian king, had to do the unthinkable and execute Daniel because he was basically rocked with the choice of either trying to maintain control of his empire, maintain control as the governing authority, or execute his friend, that many at the time were in violation of King Darius's governmental authority. So King Darius is in a hard, is in a, basically a tough spot, and like most of us sitting here trying to figure out, well, what are we gonna do? What should I do? Should I save my empire, or should I go ahead and execute Daniel? Well, King Darius made the choice to sign off on Daniel's execution, which he did. But, and this is the most amazing thing, despite the choice of King Darius and the doom that Daniel was about to experience, God decided to intervene. And as a result of God's intervention, Daniel lived. As a result of God's intervention, Daniel lived. Regardless of the decree of King Darius, regardless of what King Darius had to do and the expected outcome of that decree, God intervened, and and Daniel survived. Now, you're asking, well, why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because women are faced with decisions regarding their pregnancy day in, day out, whether wanted or unwanted, and are many times found in very tough predicaments, being in tough spots. Instead of picket signs, political attacks, unhealthy rhetoric, especially around Planned Parenthood locations and other abortion clinics, why don't we just take time to pray, seeking God's wisdom, to listen to what God is saying and to the concerns of the women who are in need of these services, and trust Yahweh as the God of all the earth, who will do what is right. We need to pray. We need to listen, and we need to trust Yahweh. Listen, I don't have all the answers. Many times I'm typically in the wrong. So I'm at times having to find myself in a place where I'm just relying on God to give me what I need to get by. And I've made wrong decisions in my life. and had to pray for God to intervene, and at times hoped and wished that God would intervene despite the decisions that I've made. So let's get out of the judgmental, condemning attitude. Let's get out of that and let us pray, let us listen, and let us trust Yahweh. I want to thank you for giving me the time and lending your ears. I know this is typically a rough subject, and it's one of those subjects that even me, I'm kind of afraid for what the responses may be. But I believe in what I presented here is enough to bring peace and clarity to a lot of people who are suffering grief and facing challenges and in regards to Roe versus Wade. And listen, I'm just hoping for the best. And I believe that Yahweh is the only one who can deliver it. So thank you for giving me your ear. And I hope that this finds you well and that it encourages you to live another day. Um, God bless, peace, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Again, always like, share, subscribe. Get this message out to your friends, to your family, to people that are hurting. This may be a blessing towards them. All right, hold it down. Peace.